Company is a show that is really, really important to me and really affected me very emotionally when I first was introduced to it in high school, and it's still to this day one of my favorite, if not my favorite, musicals of all time. A lot of that is because of the song Being Alive, which comes in at the very, very end of the show. It's the last musical number, and it's kind of Robert summing up his journey and what he's learned. And there are two parts to the song, and in between there's this change that happens, and it's an enormous emotional change for Robert, but it's done with this tiny, tiny little technical change that has this enormous emotional ripple effect. It's pretty amazing. So let's check out the music of Being Alive. Sounds like this, the beginning. Someone to hold you too close, someone to hurt you too deep, someone to sit in your chair and ruin your sleep. And it keeps repeating like that, you know, this repetitive motion over and over, and then the same kind of melody, the same kind of section of the song is repeating over and over. If you've been to the Broadway Maven before, you may have heard me talk about AABA song form, which is when the same section repeats twice. So that's like the A section, we repeat it, and then we have a different section called the B section, right? This song is more like AAAA for the first half of the song. It's the same, like, 18 bars of music repeated over and over and over, which is very odd, and it creates this effect that Bobby is kind of trapped in this loop in his mind, and he can't get out of it. However, that doesn't mean that it's redundant or that it's repetitive, because even though it's I mean, it is repetitive, but it doesn't feel repetitive. It still builds throughout each repetition. Part of the way that it builds is that we have this melody that later becomes the melody of Being Alive, Being Alive, which is like the title of the song. It's kind of the main melody of the song, but it's just played in the orchestra and Bobby doesn't sing it. And then Bobby comes in and sings it. So we're layering these different things on top. We start instrumental, then Bobby sings it. Another way that it builds is that we start adding different musical elements. Like, for example, we have this echo of a song that Bobby sings in Act 1 called Someone is Waiting, and it sounds like this. And that starts playing underneath while Bobby is singing. So we're layering these different melodies on top of each other, kind of building up as the whole show has been building up to this huge emotional change. And the last thing that happens is that all of the, like we heard Sondheim saying, all of the married friends that are like fragments of Sondheim's consciousness, they're all there giving him advice. One of them is saying, "Don't stop now, Bobby, keep going." One of them is saying, "It's much better living it than looking at it, Robert." They're all giving him kind of their perspectives as these fragmented thoughts in his mind. And all of these factors are pushing him towards this revelation. Finally, he says, "Someone who'll always be there, as frightened as you, of being alive, being alive, being alive, being alive." And then it feels almost like the ending of the first half of the song, and then there's this change. And the change is this enormous emotional change, but it's done with a tiny musical change and a tiny lyrical change. So the tiny musical change is that we go from being in E flat major, this key. It's the exact same thing, just in a different key, E major. Do you hear how small that change is? This is the first half of the song. Then this is the second half of the song. Ready? That's the entire musical change. It's so small, but that tiny little thing is enough. And then it's a lyrical change. So we now repeat almost exactly the same lyrics as the first half of the verse. Someone to hold you too close, hurt you too deep, sit in your chair, ruin your sleep. Only now, it's he is wishing for this thing. And so instead of someone to hold you too close, now he's saying somebody hold me too close. And just that tiny switch, the switch of you to me, that tiny switch pushes, instead of pushing it away from himself, he's bringing it to himself. So Miriam and Ray, to answer your question, it's from E flat major to E major. So you just take away the flat, and that's the only change you do. But it's a huge emotional change, and it's for the first time in the whole show, we see Bobby opening up his heart. And it's an enormous emotional change, but it's done with these two tiny little techniques. Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive. Being alive. Then, remember how I said before it was A? Well, now we do get a B section. Now it goes somewhere that we haven't heard it before, which is it goes to this this B section that provides contrast, a totally new melody, and it sounds like this. Make me confused, mock me with haze, let me be used, vary my days. And now it just repeats on this chord. And it builds and builds and builds as we get to this big finale. But alone is alone, not alive. Somebody crowd me with love. Somebody force me to care. Somebody let me come through. I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive. Being alive, being alive. Now remember, in the first half of the song it went F-E-D-E. Now we're going even higher up to the G, which is a way higher note. So it's this big building to this really high emotional point, and he goes, being alive. And that is the last musical number in the show. It's this enormous emotional catharsis, and I think that the success of this song is one of the reasons why this show is so amazing and intelligent and brilliant, and why it speaks so truthfully to human relationships, because the lesson that Bobby learns is that it's actually A-A-B-A at the end there. So it's A-A-A-A, A-A-B-A, because we come back to somebody crowd me with love, which is the A section. So we do come back to the A at the end there, Miriam and Ray. He knows that it's not going to be perfect. Still, there's a lot of unanswered questions. We don't even know who he wants to marry. He hasn't even met the person yet. But for the first time in his life, his heart is open to the possibility, which is a very small change. But for Robert, it's a life-changing epiphany that he's having here. And you can tell how huge of an epiphany it is from how huge the orchestration is there. So it's done with the music, and I think it's just one of the most amazing things ever written. Back to you, David.
Okay, so I'm going to share Gail, and want to give Gail a chance to respond particularly with regard to the lyrics in Being Alive, or really anything that Mateo said that's worth commenting on?
Sure. I mean, Mateo, like this analysis is so cogent and you explain it so well that even for people like me who aren't musicians and don't read, you come away from your 15-minute lectures just thinking, oh my God, there's so much going on in this song that I never appreciated. So that's my response. I just am so appreciative to Mateo.
For more information about a free weekly Broadway appreciation class, visit thebroadwaymaven.com.
Gail is going to talk to us a little bit about Ladies Who Lunch. And then, Mateo, I'm going to give you a chance to respond with comments about the music from Ladies Who Lunch, if you have something to say. So, Gail, take it away.
Sure. Oh my gosh. So thanks so much. I do want to talk about Ladies Who Lunch, which is the penultimate song in Company, the second to last. So this is towards the end of the show, of course. And what's happening in the plot is Bobo, is out dancing with his married friends, Joanne and Larry, who are much older than he is, maybe 15 years or so, and much older than the people in the club. So Larry's gotten a little loose. He's had a couple of drinks and he's dancing exuberantly. And Joanne, who's also a little lubricated, is embarrassed by the way he's dancing. She thinks he's making a fool of himself. And then she gets embarrassed because people at the club are looking at her. And she's kind of not happy about that, especially in her inebriated state. So she then sings the song sort of as a comeback to the people who are staring at her. Critic Martin Gottlieb says that this is a sardonic toast to the New York women who have money and intelligence, but no purpose. I'm going to be later talking about some of the technical stuff around language. So one thing that might make this viewing more pleasant for you or more engaging for you is, in addition to enjoying it, think about the rhymes, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Sondheim has said that rhymes can make a pretty good joke, a really fantastic joke. Think about rhymes. So it's, here's to the ladies who lunch, everybody laugh, lounging in their caftans and planning a brunch on their own behalf. Off to the gym, then to a fitting, claiming they're fat and looking grim because they've been sitting, choosing a hat. Does anyone still wear a hat? So let's think about rhymes. I know we can't have this conversation, but they're in your head, right? And here's what we've got. We've got lunch and brunch. We've got Jim and Grim. I'm saving those internal rhymes for a moment. We've got fitting, sitting, fat hat, and that. And then those wonderful internal rhymes, laugh, calf, hands, and behalf. And Sondheim said, that inner rhymes, which are fun to work out if you have a puzzle mind, have one function, which is to speed the song along. I used a lot of it in The Ladies Who Lunch, where the inner rhymes are hidden to give the song a tautness so the listener will feel what the lady is feeling. And he basically said that nobody ever gets those inner rhymes, which are hidden in Ladies Who Lunch. And I certainly never got, let's go back. I certainly never got a laugh, calf, and half. It's just sneaky, 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 and an awful lot of fun. The final stanza actually is going to give us another inner rhyme, a triple one. See if you can find it. Just think to yourself. Here's to the girls who play wife, aren't they too much? Keeping my house, but clutching a copy of Life just to keep in touch. Tricky. He snuck clutch in there between much and touch. Isn't that fantastic? He also gives us perhaps another little treat, which is some playful alliteration, instances where the initial sounds of the word repeat. So see if you can find the alliteration. Where is it here? Just think to yourself. We've got keep and clutch. We've got copy and then keep. We've got clutch, the just keep in touch. And we've got the CH and the CH at the very end of those two words. Just beautiful stuff. This is a ton of sort of formal information in just these 13 little words. And then, of course, if we go back to the first stanza, just looking for alliteration, we can see just how subtly he plays with language throughout this song. So just read through this on your own and see if you can find it. So alliteration, maybe you've got some examples in your head, maybe. Here's what I found. I've got all those L's and ladies and lunch and laugh and lounging and then looking and all Although technically, I'm not sure if the all works because that's the end of the line, but we'll keep it in there for now. We've got caftans with that C sound with claiming and cuz. We've got the B sound in brunch, behalf, and bin. We've got the in there and the. We got the G sound in Jim and grim. Wow, there might even be more in there, but that's sort of what I found. And then, if you want to look at it with rhymes, look at how the alliteration and the rhymes just crowd up this little stanza with so much kind of playful language. It's stunning. And of course, Sondheim always writes purposely. Yeah, he's got playful rhymes and fun alliteration. There's this adds spice to the songs, but they also speak to character. So not only is Joanne highly educated and witty, but her language can convey something in addition. Maybe Joanne amuses herself with words. Maybe like Sondheim, she likes to play games to entertain herself and others. And maybe her biggest regret in life is that she's never really found her peer, someone with whom she can match wit. And that might be the tragedy of Joanne.
Please like and subscribe.
Mateo, tell us a little bit about the music of Ladies Who Lunch.
Ladies Who Lunch. Okay, cool. It's a bossa nova is the style of the music, which is like something that is, often played in these like high-end cocktail bars, especially at the time it was written. This like rhythmic bass line with the changing chords in the right hand. That's very bossa nova, and that like chugging rhythm. So it kind of sets the scene for where they are. It also is striking how low it is written. It's written so low that in fact, in the version of the sheet music that I have, it's written in bass clef, which is like the way of writing music that is lower down than the standard treble clef. And that shows you how remarkably low Elaine Stritch's voice was. And they actually moved it up a tone for Patti LuPone.
Gail mentioned that the scene where Bobby is basically hit upon by one of his married male friends, that scene doesn't appear. There's no like lesbian equivalent of that in this show. And there doesn't seem to be any lesbian desire at all. You could have Joanne at the end, right? Joanne could be saying to her, why don't we make it? Because that's what happens in the original company. But she doesn't say that. She says, why don't you make it with my husband? So why isn't there a lesbian presence in the show?
It makes no sense.
Gail, you and I have talked about this.
Oh, it makes me crazy, David. The change. So just to reiterate, in the original one, the female Joanne hits on the male Bobby and says, well, how come we never made it, right? And then whatever. And then Bobby goes on and then sings Being Alive. And in this one, rather than saying the female Joanne saying to the female Bobby, why have we never made it? She says, you should make it with my husband, Larry. It makes no sense. And there's no reason in this. They're hip New Yorkers. They're cool. They're urbane. There's no reason Joanne doesn't hit on Bobby, in my opinion. I think it's just bad. It's bad playwriting. I don't know. Yeah. Mateo, we've talked about that.
Yeah. I was also super bummed when I found out that, because I never got to see the Reimagined revival. But I asked Gail, I was like, okay, you saw it. So tell me, the ending, what did they do? And you told me, and I was like, no.
So Mateo, in a previous class, you talked a little bit about how we know whether Bobby is ready in the song at the end of the first act and the song at the end of the second act. I thought maybe you could share the people in this session about what you talked about.
Right. Well, so we've talked about how Being Alive is the moment where Bobby realizes that he is ready to open his heart up, and he does maybe want to get married. But he actually sings a song earlier in the show in Act 1 called Marry Me a Little, where he says, I'm ready to get married. And he sings, I'm ready now. Now, that musically is telling a very different story than the words. The words are saying, I'm ready now. But I always say the words can lie, but the music can't lie. The music always tells the truth in a musical. And so if you play all of those notes together, listen to this chord. Like, that doesn't sound like he's got it all figured out. There are a lot of crunches and dissonances there that need to be ironed out still. This is not a happy, healthy chord. And so it tells us, like, the fact that that's underneath Bobby saying, I'm ready, is like, it makes us feel like kind of uneasy. And the subconscious thing that we pick up on, you know, most audience members won't go, you know, that's a suspended second sharp 4 add flat 6 chord. Oh, he's therefore not ready. Most people don't pick up on it in that way, but it does affect us subconsciously. And here's a really obvious example of how that works. When he goes, I'm ready now. If it went, I'm ready now, we can hear, anybody can hear that feels more resolved, it feels more final. But instead it goes, I'm ready now. It goes to this totally weird alternate key that isn't what you expect, and so it doesn't resolve itself. It doesn't feel finalized, and you're like, oh no, there's more to this story. Maybe he's not entirely ready. And then the end of the song, of course, is he's just like, I'm ready, you know, and it just vamps and fades out. There's no big, right? There's no finalized moment for that song. It just kind of peters out a little bit. Whereas if you compare that to you heard that big climax in Being Alive. Being alive, boom, huge epic orchestra landing on, listen to this chord, right? There's no dissonance there, right? No wrong notes there. Compare this chord and how beautiful and full and complete that sounds with the chord I was playing before. This piece of garbage, like, what the hell is that? That's so, like, disgusting. And so we can hear how unresolved it is. And the interesting part to me is that Bobby never actually says the words I'm ready in Being Alive, which is something I only realized in the first noon class on Sunday, is that he actually never says the words I'm ready in Being Alive. And that, I think, is the point. I think in Marry Me a Little, he's like, I'm ready, it's gonna be perfect, let's do it. And Sondheim's trying to tell us through his music, that's not the right answer. He's not gonna get it. He doesn't get it, right? He doesn't understand. But then in Being Alive, he's not saying I'm ready. He's not saying it's gonna be perfect. He knows it's not gonna be perfect. He doesn't even know who he wants to be with, and he knows he's never gonna be ready, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not gonna be worthwhile, because alone is alone, not alive. And oh, yes, Sondheim tells us, yes, that's it. He gets it now. He gets it. And he tells us that with his music, which is pretty incredible.
So, Mateo, when you taught about Rose's Turn and compared it to Being Alive, you pointed out that in Rose's Turn, she says, what did it get me? And in Being Alive from Company, he says, what do you get?
Mm-hmm.
And you said that, isn't it interesting that both of those shows have that line? And I've been thinking about it, and I would add Assassins. Where's My Prize? Also.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, actually.
So
yes.
What is the deal with Sondheim at the end of his shows? People saying, well, what did I get? That's clearly a theme. Once it happens 3 times, it's not a coincidence.
For more information about a free weekly Broadway appreciation class, visit thebroadwaymaven.com.
Gail, what's your favorite lyric in the show?
Oh, dear. Well, I love the rhyme of it's harder than a matador coercionable to try to get you off your rump. I do love that. I know it's everybody's favorite, but I love it.
Personable, coercionable.
That is wonderful.
I didn't say the first part. If a person's personality is personable, he should not sit like a lump. It's harder than a matador coercionable. Thank you, Mateo, for giving me the first part of that.
Mateo, what's your favorite musical tidbit from Company that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I mean, like that change in being alive is one of my favorite musical tidbits of all time. If not my favorite musical tidbit of all time. It is huge in its influence on me as a musician and as a composer. Like learning how big of a difference can come from such a tiny little thing.
Less is more,
Yeah.
Mateo. Less is more.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Something Sondheim
One
used
of
to say all the
Sondheim's
time.
axioms.
Why the title Company? And there are 3 reasons. I wrote about this for the All Access Pass several months ago, the last time we did Company. The first reason is company means somebody that you're with, right? I need company. I need somebody to be with. Second, company means having people over for dinner. Right? So that he's having a party, he's having company. And the third reason is there's an entire company. They come out and they sing side by side together. So the title has at least 3 meanings, and those are they.
And here's my Stephen Sondheim playlist.